Hey everyone, welcome back to TV Guys, the show that's never had to pee on your hand. I'm Matt,
I'm Brian.
and we're back for another season of Survivor. And I don't know about you, Brian. Did you get deja vu watching this season?
Well, I did, but this is another season that I rewatched like 5 years ago, so it was still not too unfresh in my mind.
Well, for me, I feel like Survivor already was running out of ideas. This isn't a scripted show, but if it was, I would call the writers back into the room and be like, guys, you've already done an island in the South Pacific. And what else do you got here? You got a alliance of 4 people. Okay, that's cool. Let me guess. It's led by a big gay guy. And then you also have kind of more like the stoic other dude that just will tell you what it is, as well as the young girl and the more curmudgeon-y older girl. And then that is going to be what tries to go to the top. Oh, and then also, like in season 3 with Lex and Ethan, you have a winner who kind of like played a little bit more closer to the chest and let her more boisterous, louder personality take the heat. Like multiple storylines from other
You
seasons.
you also forgot to mention that the more boisterous person in the 4-person alliance also makes the big "I hate you" speech in tribal council.
True. That's true. She does in that. Yeah, and like, I mean, you could Sean and Visepia were like Lex and Ethan, where like Lex just jumped out there, took all the targets, took all the bullets, and not to say Visepia wasn't a good player at all, but
Yeah,
she
we'll get to
definitely
her. Yeah,
benefited from Sean being the personality
yeah.
that he had.
The difference there is that Vecepia and Sean were kind of an alliance out of convenience and necessity. Like they said towards the end, we never said we weren't going to vote for each other. Whereas Lex and Ethan was a more intentional alliance.
Correct. Yeah. Um,
And
and it's kind of funny that you bring that up because even Sean brought that up. It's really funny that like all these years ago, like Sean brings that up is like, hey, just because we're both black and we're on the same tribe doesn't mean that like immediately we're like, oh, we've got to have an alliance. Like we connect on certain things. They were both Christians. They both
yeah,
like there's a lot of circumstance that just kind of threw them together. But really, like I know he never said the word alliance, but honestly, I feel like Sean had more of an alliance with Boston Rob than he
well,
did with
absolutely.
Giuseppe.
But the thing is that Rob went out early, and then after Rob, and then again, like they had to work together because the 4-person alliance was it was everyone against them.
Correct.
And real quick before we get going, we talked about previous seasons. You've talked about returning to the South Pacific. The reason they did that was because they were originally going to film in the Middle East, and then this is being filmed a month after 9/11, so they had to quickly change plans. And okay, I guess we're going back here. And
Yeah.
then just to clarify, so when we talked about Survivor Africa, I said that after the whole mix up with the challenge where they're quizzing you on previous contestants, I said they decided not to do that again after the whole thing where Lex got it right, but they didn't know till the finale.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was true, except Survivor filmed seasons back to back. And so by the time season three's finale was airing, season 4 had already been filmed. So they did decide after season 3, after that, to not do that anymore. But obviously, this was already done by that point. So this was the last time you'll see it. And I forgot that they did that because then I remembered saying that. I'm like, so I looked into it, and that's why.
Yeah. Now this season was not nearly as harsh as Africa. Like Africa is just I'm still astounded that like we're gonna drop you here in the middle of
Yeah.
the African desert and like terrible water source. Animals want to kill them on all sides. Like this one, sure, there's animals and there's still dangers, but it's like you're gonna get bit by no-nos. It's gonna annoy the crap out of you,
Yeah.
but you're not gonna die.
There is
You have your
one.
shots.
Yeah, there's at least one more season of Survivor. There's Survivor Gabon, which I think is season 17, but I don't think it's in quite as harsh of an area as Survivor Africa was. But yeah, I mean, here you're back to having the ocean.
And they kind of I think the producers are like we can't go immediately from the harshness of Africa to Marquesas. They're like we're going to give you a very minimal supplies. We're like compared to the past what they did, especially with Africa. I mean they gave them food rations in both Africa and Australia, and I imagine they did in the first season too. I can't remember, but
I
this
wonder
one,
what the
I'm sorry.
yeah, I wonder what the Middle East would have been like because that's what it was going to be.
Yeah. This one, they're like, yeah, we're not going to give you any food rations. If they can survive in Africa, then you can survive on this cushy island where there's chickens walking around 20 feet from your camp. And if you can catch them, or if you can catch fish, then you can have some good protein.
Yeah. So I have some specific notes in this season, but I feel like we maybe kind of go like loosely through the season in order.
Yeah.
Probably.
What I find funny. Let's start like with episode 1, because
Yeah.
the first note that I wrote when I was watching this is watching Boston Rob, employ the exact same strategy that actually makes him win, or not him, but get to the final 2 in All Stars, because he sees this hot girl and is like, I got to get with that, and like I'm gonna try and control her and manipulate her. But the problem was, I don't feel like Sarah's very smart. And so she actually was like manipulated, and it didn't work well for Boston Rob. I
Yeah.
feel like Amber's smart. And so when Rob's trying to manipulate her, I feel like she actually like had the pants in it. She had the control in it, and she was a lot smarter of a player than Sarah was. And I think that's why Rob and Amber had a lot more success than Rob and Sarah.
Also, it also helped that in All Stars, Rob was on a tribe that won more.
Yeah. They did, like, a big part of it was they got split up. And Sarah getting pulled away from Rob, she didn't have any support. And it was another Silas situation from season 3, where it's like,
Yeah.
this was the worst possible thing that could have happened for her. Gina also, it didn't work out well for her based on how things fell. But Sarah was like the immediate, we got to get her
Well,
out.
it worked better for Gina because Gina fell right in with Pascal and Leah, and they only got rid of her because they had to.
Yeah.
Like,
I know we're getting ahead of it because I want to talk about like what would have happened if Hunter could have made it one more week or one more tribal council, because the switch happened right after Hunter got voted out. And based on personalities on the other tribe, I could see Hunter doing really well in this game if he could have made it to the tribe swap.
I remember this. So Hunter, it was a big shock. I remember in those first few episodes, he was kind of portrayed as like a big character of the season.
Yeah.
And I remember when we were watching it when I was growing up with my youth pastor and his wife, everyone there, like my parents, everyone loved Hunter. And they were pissed when he got voted out.
Oh, yeah.
How dare they do that to him? He is but I mean, it's what the game is. But yeah, and it's kind of like, it reminds me of like how to tease a few weeks from now, Lost was originally going to potentially kill off Jack and make you think he's the main character, and then they kill him off. It's kind of what happened here.
Yeah. And it was annoying to kind of watch flashes of season 3 hit season 4 in that way, like with Hunter, where it's like, hey, here's the guy that works super hard and is not like lazy and laying around. And I'm not saying like Sean and Rob are lazy. Like the people in season 3, that tribe, they were. I just think that Sean and Rob were less gung-ho than a lot of the players, including Hunter. And so when you're watching, you're like, oh, these lazy people, and Hunter's working so hard, and he's trying to carry the team, and he's great, and he's golden boy, and he's like an actual like fighter pilot. Like in the reunion, they joke that he's like the real life Tom Cruise from Top Gun. Like, this guy is the chiseled awesome, and you vote him out when you needed someone to help you win. But
yeah, well, it's because they weren't thinking about tribal loyalty. They were thinking about individual game going forward. And from their perspective, it may have not been a terrible move, because you can't just think about our tribal loyalty, because there could be tribe swaps. There could be, there's going to be a merge, and at some point it's an individual game, and you don't want the athletic people to be in the game at that point.
Yeah, it actually ended up working out really well for specifically Sean and Visepia, but it could have worked out better for Boston Rob if they would have played things a little bit better once they got to the merge.
Yeah.
But it didn't end up being such a terrible move. But yeah, if they didn't do a swap, I think that just they would have like had, Gina obviously would have been next, but I think they would have lost each immunity challenge until they got to the merge, and they would have just been picked off one by one and had no hope at that point.
Yeah. And also, they didn't play it up like it was a big deal, because we as the audience had just seen a tribe swap in Africa. But these guys would have never seen a tribe swap because Survivor 3
Oh
was
yeah.
didn't air until this was already filming. So for them, they didn't know it was coming either.
It's funny when they got. I know we've already jumped to episode 4. We haven't even talked about Peter and Patricia, but in that tribe swap episode, it was really funny to see them like reading the tree mail as like, hey, it's not a reward or immunity challenge. I don't know what this is, and us having watched season 3, we're like, wait a second, are they doing this again? Because like I had forgotten that they did a tribe swap. But
Yeah.
I just know that that's the nature of the producers, and if they get a good idea, they will go back to that well. And so I was like, it's going to be something. And I was right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't really have actually a ton to talk. I know we skipped over like those first 2 episodes. I don't have a ton to talk about
Me either, really.
with like Peter or Patricia.
I don't really either. And then was Peter, Patricia, then it was Hunter.
Then
Yeah.
Hunter. And Hunter, episode 3 was the one where like it kind of picked up because season 1, episode 1 and 2, a lot of Survivor, the first 2 episodes, you're like, yeah, you're getting to know them, but it's not super interesting. You're like, okay, here's some random person getting voted off. I care nothing about them. I'm just trying to get my feet wet with this. And so, there's not any big thing that happens. And then episode 3 gets like one of the biggest moments of the season, and John grabs a sea urchin. It stings him. And he's just like, okay, I get that where his mind went, and it seems like that was the right thing to do, but he's like, he knows that he has to get his hand peed on. But just him walking out of the ocean like, I need someone to pee on my hand. He's like a 4-year-old like walking out of the ocean like, I need an adult. Someone come help me.
Do you think he knew that because of Friends?
He said in the reunion, he actually was, because like I actually used that GIF earlier tonight. That's right, I stepped up.
Yeah,
and I'm like, I mean, that's the same idea, but he referenced that they did have survival training ahead of time, like they did a little bit that they talked them through, and he had remembered that from what they're talking about, and then something about as a nurse, he was familiar with the powers of ammonia and what that would do for. So like he explained it and how he knew going ahead of time that was going to work. We don't know for sure that did anything. Like we're just taking his word for it. Let's be honest. And if anyone's going to save face, it's going to be the guy that got peed on. All right.
Exactly. In reunion, he said, yeah, it worked right away. But then what do I do? Tell her to stop peeing?
I like that. So Pascal comes over first, and he's gonna pee on his hand, but then Pascal's like, "I'm dry. I got nothing." So it's like really nice of you to whip it out in front of everyone, but not be able to.
It really is like the Friends episode because Joey tried and he couldn't, and then Chandler is Kathy.
Oh man. I'd say you can't write this, but you can because they wrote it for Friends.
The creators of Friends did, and that was early enough. The Friends would have happened before this.
Oh yeah, that was 10 years before this. But it's such a fun moment, and I'm sure the producers are like, we have to include this. This is like a highlight of the season, and it was hilarious. It was a great bonding moment. Weirdly enough, when you get peed on by another person, you remember it for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and then.
I don't say that as someone who's experienced it. I imagine.
Yeah.
Don't be so quiet after I say something like that. Like
I don't know what to say about that.
Well, I've
never experienced it either. Like I don't know. Yay.
Thank you. All right. Well, this episode 2, we had shades of what was the I can't remember the previous tribe from season 3 or 2. There's one that they were on a strict losing streak. So Mata Amu lost the first 5 challenges all in a row. Mm-hmm. And that sucks. That's got to be rough. Like watching you guys have to go back to tribal council over and over and to also not get any rewards and all that sort of stuff. So they lost 5 in a row. And that's why, again, that Hunter vote, because it follows on the 5th challenge, that was the immunity challenge that Hunter ended up getting voted out at tribal council. You're like, you've got to break this losing streak, and you see the attitude of the others in the camp where it's lacking a team attitude, and it's lacking like actually listening to the leadership of someone who has worked on a team before. And yet I think like Sean and Rob were both the personality of like, I'm not going to listen to someone's not going to order me around. And they're very like anti-establishment who was Hunter, and they rebelled against the establishment. And then it's like, well, good luck winning stuff. But thankfully episode 4 comes, we have the tribe swap.
Yeah. And like with that attitude, I mean, yeah, it's good to be independent as far as like voting and keeping yourself alive. But okay, when it comes to challenges, that becomes a team aspect. Like you have to have some cohesion as a team.
Yeah, I like the characters of Boston Rob and Sean. They're very dynamic players. And like I'm really surprised that we hadn't seen Sean brought back. I believe he's he's a one-timer. And he had such a killer personality. He says some great lines. I like later in the season, I think it's the John versus Sean vote that John gets voted, where he's holding up the vote in the little confessional booth, and he's just like, you know, you clearly never been to Vegas because you always bet on black. And then like John gets voted out. I'm like, that's a baller line. That's a great line. Sean has some really awesome moments. Yeah. But there's also, because he's like that big, boisterous, I'm going to speak my mind, there are times like this against Hunter where like, Sean, man, come on.
Yeah. And he brought up the race card more than anybody else.
He did. And it's kind of funny that like, going back to what we talked about where he's like, me and V never had an alliance, you just assume that because we're black. I'm like, okay, but at the same time, look at how often you guys voted together. You were right, Brian, when you said it's like an alliance of necessity. They never were intentional about it. And yeah, maybe that's on us for just thinking, okay, the two black people, they're going to have an alliance.
Well, it wasn't because they're black. It was because they were on the same tribe swap. And especially after the merge, when Rob gets voted out, it's the 4-person alliance. Pascal and Nelia are doing their own thing. Kathy's kind of a floater, and then they're just there.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, you're right. It was of convenience. It was, this is the person you know. But they also really got along well, too. They did have a good friendship. So it's like, I'm sorry, Sean, forgive us for thinking you guys are allied. You might not use that word, but I mean, let's be honest, you kind of are. It's almost like a dating relationship where it's like, you know, we've all seen those people where it's like a girl and a guy like each other and they're not like boyfriend and girlfriend, but like if one of them started dating someone else, then the feelings would be hurt. Like you're pretty much a couple. Can you call yourself a couple? It's like Sean and V, you guys are pretty much an alliance. Can you call, you like each other, you enjoy each other, you need to vote together to stay alive, and they kind of did, but you know, use the A word. It's fine.
Yeah. And in this case, the A word is alliance.
Yes, that's the A word we're talking about.
Yes. And then kind of go back. The next few episodes are kind of blah as well. Like we already talked about Sarah. Like I think Sarah, Gabe, and Gina are kind of there's a little bit to talk about, but I don't know. The pre-merge in this season is kind of a slog, I think.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to bring up with Gabe. I get why they voted him out, because Gabe in the episode he gets voted out, like John's talking to him and having this conversation of like, well, how's this voting going to go? And it's like, we might be voting for you. He's like, man, I'm not here to play the game. I'm like, what are you talking about? Everyone's there to play the game. Don't like, okay, either A, he didn't mean it and he's just trying to be laissez-faire and is like, if that's the case, you can't be trusted, you should get voted out. Or B, he actually means it, which I think he really did. Yeah. And it's like, if that's the case, you don't deserve to be here anyway. Every other person has that desire to like, I want to give my best, I want to fight to win. We don't need dead weight who just wants to kind of enjoy the scenery and pick the roses.
And that's someone who you can't trust. And it's like, you can play the game and still enjoy the experience of Survivor, but don't sign up for a game and then say, I don't want to play the game.
Yeah, exactly. So it frustrated me watching it. And like, I wasn't a big John fan. Like at first I was like, ooh, John, I'm going to root for him because he's from Omaha, Nebraska, just like me. And like, he actually came, John, and I believe it was Rob the General. I think both of those guys, I can't remember for sure the second one, but I know John came to my middle school and they did an assembly and spoke to all of us. And I'm like, John, I never really rooted for you. I didn't care about your alliance. I was rooting for Pascal and Nelia the whole time.
Yeah. My crew that was watching it was all big on Pascal and Nelia as well. Just, yeah. the Mormon girl and the judge who brought the American flag. That was definitely the crowd of my parents growing.
And you all adopted the phrase, "Oh my heck."
Yeah.
All right. Now, yeah, post merge, I think I really liked the drama of the alliance versus everyone else. So first of all, like the spearheading of the alliance was John, and you actually kind of see the alliance just completely fall apart once John gets voted out. But when he's keeping everything together and he's like kind of trying to mastermind this, he is the one you have to take down. So Rob is kind of on the other side of like the strategery, the strategizing. And I mean, like, yeah, you've got Kathy and you got Leah and Pascal who are kind of just there going along with it. And even Vesepia is a bit like just going along with it. But it's like really Rob and Sean versus John and the other three. And so there's these huge blowups, and Rob's just like, I'm going to stir the pot. I'm going to put everything out there. I do appreciate that Rob's like, let me just lay it all out on the table. If we're playing the I'm going to be honest game, I'm going to throw out the honesty. This is what you did. And he just kind of created this chaos, but the chaos completely backfired on him because Nalia and Pascal just saw someone like who's chaotic, and Kathy, they saw someone who's chaotic more so than they saw like, oh, we need to actually be aware of this alliance.
Which is a shame because if so they ended up voting out Rob, if Rob made it one more vote into the jury, it could have gone very differently because I have a lot to say about the challenge that comes next. But if you have more to say about this area, because it was Rob was like blowing up, like like you think you're being all slick, and he laid it out, and Rob was right. He just didn't have the numbers on his side.
Yeah, and I think Rob kicks himself because he gave up the game. When there's the immunity challenge where they're all standing on the water platforms, I'm not saying, I don't know for sure like he would have won. But what Rob does at one point is he leans towards the water to splash up at John. And in doing so, you're not allowed to touch the platform that you're on. You're supposed to keep your balance with only your feet. You can't touch it at all. So when he goes to do the splash, he kind of shifts just a little bit and barely touches the platform so he doesn't fall in. He's out. And that was the challenge that he gets voted out on. And Kathy's like, I'm going to get voted. I have to win this immunity challenge. She really easily could have been if things happen in a certain way. But Kathy gets the immunity challenge instead of Rob or instead of John. Those are like the final three that were sticking around there. And Rob had a shot to make it to the jury. So that was his big, honestly, his big thing is you tried to mess with John, backfired, and then you got out. All right, let's talk about. Go ahead.
Well, earlier you mentioned returning players. So Rob and Kathy are the only two from the season who ever came back to play again.
Really, I like both Rob and Kathy. Kathy was a little much pre-merge, but then like I found myself just rooting for her.
Me too. I mean, it's funny watching it this time around because I know who wins. You know, I knew Vesepia won. But I'm realizing, like, if I was watching it now as an adult for the first time, like, I would be rooting for Kathy towards the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Kathy, like, she did play the game honestly and actually honestly. She had a little bit of naivety, and that kind of worked to her advantage in terms of how people viewed her. But I think she played a really smart game by believing in the best for people. She was a good player, a good character. But you talked about the next challenge because that literally, this next challenge completely changes the game. It is the huge swing point for the entire game that if it would have gone differently, we would have had a different
I remember this challenge too. From when it aired 20 years ago. So the basic challenges for listeners who haven't seen it is it's a trivia game about the world, and your prize whenever you get a question right. Everyone has these.
You're conflating the two. This. Oh wait, no, you're not. I'm sorry, I'm wrong. You're right.
Yeah, everyone has these tables with 3 ropes on them, and you cut the rope, and it would like release coconuts and drop down, and it was basically like the last one standing. So they ask trivia questions. Everyone who gets one right gets to take a machete and chop the rope off of somebody else in the tribe, and basically like get them one closer to being out. And this is where, so before this happened, there's a clear 4-person alliance. We keep saying that is John, the general, and Tammy and Zoe. And then they also have on their side, Pascal and Aaliyah are voting with them as a 6-person, but they're not really, they're kind of like not really part of the alliance. And then there's Kathy and Sean and Vesepia. Kathy, Sean, and Vesepia, before this challenge, had been telling Pascal and Aaliyah, like, you're at the bottom of the alliance. You can flip things and come with us. And they're like, no, we're not going to shake things up. We don't want to. We don't believe we're at the bottom. And it was going nowhere. Then at this challenge, like the 4-person alliance systematically targeted. It was Sean, then Vesepia, then Kathy, then Pascal, then Nalia. And it was very clear they made, this is the pecking order. And it became super obvious. And okay, this was, I told Matt I had a rant, a you're so stupid rant. Okay. So for just a second, I'm gonna change the format of our podcast and make it like Blue's Clues or Dora the Explorer. I'm gonna talk to the audience like they're little kids. Matt has no idea where I'm going. We might.
I'm out. You go for it.
All right. So, what do you think is a bigger number, 4 or 5? Listening? That's right. 5 is a bigger number than 4. So if you have 4 people and there's 5 people who are not with you, you're not in the majority. So maybe don't get cocky and act like you're winning and ostracize the other 5 people, because guess what? They outnumber you. And if they had just mixed up the order, not made it so obvious, and not made it so obvious that Pascal and Aaliyah were at the bottom of their alliance, then Pascal and Aaliyah would have stayed with them. They could have, held on, like playing happy-go-lucky 6 of us yay time for 2 more votes, and then boom, now you have 4 against 3, and you can do whatever you want. But they made it, they don't have the majority.
And there wasn't a problem with just going, like, everyone going after Sean of that alliance. Everyone getting Sean out right away, because they knew Sean needed to be next, because Sean was the biggest voice that was detracting, that could rally everyone together. And
after Rob, it was Sean.
The Sean and John feud for those couple days was very clear and obvious. Yeah. And so no one would have been like, oh, they have a bone to pick with Sean. Duh, they're going to be trying to get him out. Okay, we understand that. We can see why. But then to make it, like you said, so clear, and then the way that they were going about it, they were gloating and everything. And John even does, like, sure, this is to Sean first. And again, I don't, whatever. But he does, like, on Sean's final one, he blows a kiss to Sean. And he even later says it was like Godfather style, like, this is a kiss of death, And Sean, like, catches it in air and then puts it on his butt and, giving it right back at him. And that's fine. The Sean versus John thing. But then they're just being cocky, like, haha, we're getting you. We're getting you. We're getting you. Oh, now it's us 4 left. Who's going to get it? And it's like, you guys reveled way too much in it. And because of that, you lost the game.
Exactly. Like, Pascal, and it was at that challenge that Pascal and Nalia realized they had to make a move. Yeah, because Nalia even said, like, I didn't come this far just to go out 5th and 6th. And like I said, if they had just not been so cocky, maybe gotten one of themselves out in the middle, because it was, they didn't all need the majority. They already got Sean, as long as they got Sean out.
Yeah. And then fast forward real quick to the jury and Tammy's statement. Because Tammy goes off about Nalia and it's just like, you were content being 5th or 6th, and then you got greedy. I'm like, oh, shut up. Like, that is the most spoiled, entitled thing. Like, that you were going to be so gracious to give her 5th or 6th. But hey, look, she actually flipped the tables on you, and here she is in the final 2. And you're like, how dare you not accept the gift I gave you? Like, come on, get off the high horse.
Like, how dare you not just try to win the game? Or how dare you try to win a game? You're playing a game. You should be trying to play for 4th place if I'm playing.
Exactly. I'm like, Tammy, gonna slap the crap out of you. I didn't dislike Tammy until that.
Exactly.
Even on the
Tammy
one
was,
challenge. So, we
yeah,
didn't have anyone that went off on a tear like how like Colby did in season 2. We had some
yeah,
string together. Like Kathy had a couple challenges together. Pascal randomly wins 2 back-to-back reward challenges.
yeah,
And so like we had a couple that like that towards the end throughout that season. But Tammy won back-to-back immunity challenges after John gets voted out. And one of them is on stilts. And this face that she gets when she's on those stilts, the face of concentration, is also like a do not mess with me. I am as serious as a heart attack. Everyone else is kind of like, oh, I can't handle it. I'm on these stilts. Oh, man, I suck at this.
yeah.
And she's like, I will win this no matter what. No one is taking this from me. Like, I have never seen anyone be that. It was the Stanley in the sumo suit face. It was
Yeah.
like, this is not what you normally look like.
Yeah, like, and then Jim's like, I've never seen that look in Stanley ever.
So John gets voted off, and I hate to be mean. No, I don't hate to be mean about it, but like he. He was crying and like, Mom, I did my best. Seriously, like the amount of times that John this season felt like he was a 5-year-old,
Yeah,
it's more than 0, and it shouldn't be that way. He's a grown man.
yeah. He is okay. I looked it up. He was then our age now.
Oh my gosh. What if
Yeah.
I called my mom like, Mom, the kids weren't nice to me. I had an alliance and we had 4 of us and we were going to win. And then they voted me out.
And what happened? Did she give you a juice box?
No, no, she'd be like, Matt, I don't even know what you're talking about. Just...
Yeah.
No, my mom's not as like there's some moms out there like Angie's gonna be that kind of mom where it's like suck it up buttercup, like Angie's a bit no nonsense, like she's compassionate, of course she loves our kids 100%, but sometimes the kids, especially if they're 35, you're like, so what, you can get over this, I believe in you. But my mom might be a little bit more coddly if I was that way. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, next
and of course,
episode. Sorry.
Yeah. Then we start of the rest of the alliance falling.
So this episode 9, there are 2 big things that happen in it that we'll get back to the voting in a second because I want to talk about. I really enjoyed. So season 3, we had a pairing up challenge where Frank and Brandon were paired up, the most unlikely pairing that there was, and they come around and they win that reward challenge. Pascal and Sean are put together and those 2 win, and Sean as soon as they win, he tackles Pascal to the ground. They're rolling around in the sand on a beach and he's just like, I'm so excited. What a great, like, every single one of these so far of the dueling it up for rewards has just been golden. Great opposites that win.
What was their award again? It was one of like the food ones, right?
They did a horseback ride where Sean hurt his balls, and then they went to a big traditional the Marquesian feast. I had a lot of parts in that sentence. I really wanted to pause for effect to see. No, they did the Marquesian feast, which was a fun thing too because they're like, we snuck back all this food. And I wonder if, like, after they did that, the producers like, we can't have that happen again because there was another reward where 2 people went away and then they came back and they, like, we hear later that's like, they wouldn't let them take any food back. They even had like a thing of mints that were there by the bedside and they take the mints and apparently they're like, nope, you can't take it with you, which makes sense.
Yeah, but then still skipping ahead, don't offer 6 hungry people a mint out of your mouth.
So Nalia was the most 21-year-old blonde in that moment. She didn't play a dumb game. I don't feel like she's like just some dumb girl, but that was 100% the dumbest thing we saw her do, where she's like, my heart's in the right place. Maybe I can stick all these mints in my mouth and I can transport them that way and then I can offer it to them. I'm like, can you think through that plan for more than 5 seconds and just, feel it out. Put yourself in their shoes just for a moment.
Yeah.
All right. But then the other thing that happened in this episode 9 was the collapse. Oh my gosh. It imploded. That alliance imploded upon itself like a collapsing star, man. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it was so funny. It was almost like Zoe's like a career politician because she's like, "What alliance are we talking about? I never had an alliance. People ask me about alliance. I never knew P Diddy. I wasn't friends with him. I never hung out with him. And ever, I know you've got pictures, but those are taken out of context. Like, just
Yeah.
deny.
I did not have an alliance.
Seriously. And Zoe's like, and she even says in Talking Heads, she's like, I got to distance myself as much. I'm like, okay, I get that. I do get that. Obviously, the alliance is a bad thing. You need to distance yourself. I don't know what you're able to do. I don't know how they could have turned the tide on this. But whatever she did was not the right way to go about it. It was so stupid. And she thought people were going to vote for Rob, and she ended up being the one voted out.
I mean, what she could have done is she could have gone to, I'd say, Pascal and Leah and Kathy, because they were on the original tribe together, but they're still part of the 5 that voted out John, and just said, hey, like, I'm a free agent now. My alliance collapsed. You can use me for a number. Do you like try to appeal that way?
Yeah,
because those 5 were never grouped together. Like Pascal, Nalia, Kathy, Sean, and V, they were never a group. They were, again, that was another group of necessity to get John out.
Yeah, because we hear it later in like some of the last couple of tribal councils, but they had said throughout the season, once they got to the merge, that one of the new things they were doing was that if you won an individual immunity, you could give it to another person that you felt was in danger of being voted out.
Wait, was that new this season?
That was new this season. Yep.
Oh, I thought you could always get away if you wanted to.
No. So this was something, and Jeff kept noting is like, this is new. This is something you can do. And he kept bringing it up was like, we did this on purpose. Can someone take advantage of it? And it wasn't until like one of the last tribal councils that he also says along that, it's like, you could give it up and then you get a vote or like you get someone on your side. That's your way. And it's just like, when he said that, then Kathy had the immunity necklace at the time. She's like, Jeff, no one's asked me about it. No one's come up to me and said, hey, Kathy, would you give me your immunity necklace? And for that, I'm going to go to the end with you, or that sort of thing. And just her bringing that up and then the stuff that came out after that, it let us viewers know that sort of strategizing wasn't happening. There wasn't that scramble. The biggest strategizing that we saw was early on the Alliance of 4 and then the shift back where the 5 versus the 4. And then when we got to like the final 5, there was some more strategizing and positioning. And that's really, the season ended on a high note with that.
Yeah.
But there was a lot that was left off the table. And so the Alliance, once John got voted out, we should have seen Rob, Zoe, and Tammy play a game that wasn't, I have to win every immunity challenge between now and the final 2. We needed to see something else from them, and they just instead turned against each other. Rob and Zoe voted each other in that next one, and they were all just like, oh, there's no alliance, no alliance. And Rob's like, I'm not going to beg. I'm not going to go plead my case. I'm like, then you're getting voted out. I know that's what he pouts for a couple days and then he says, I'm not going to try and strategize. Well, then you deserve what you get.
Because you're probably going to get voted out anyways, but at least try.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny with the whole giving up immunity. In like the 40 seasons that I've seen, I can only remember one moment, we'll get in, it's many seasons from now, where someone actually does give up immunity. I mean, it maybe happens a couple times, but it's very rare because it's kind of a suicide move because you're guaranteed to not get voted out and you're opening yourself up for vulnerability. And I won't spoil the moment because that's I believe it's season 16 when that happens. So we won't be there for a while.
Whatever season it was, I remember it happening once, and I can't remember.
It's probably the same one
behind it.
I remember, but I don't want to get too far ahead just because we're not talking about that season yet.
That's fine. I probably won't remember anyway, but that's all right.
Well, I mean, for listeners, if anyone's kind of trying to like go on a Survivor binge or something, and they're listening along with us,
yeah,
which is fair because like after I watched the season, I went and it's on podcast, Apple Podcasts. I typed in Survivor Marquesas, and I found a random podcast that recapped it so I could kind of get more thoughts in my head.
Nice.
See, people could do that and listen to us.
Look at that. We chewed up this content and spit it out into your little baby mouse, baby bird mouse. I hope that
Okay,
that analogy really sat well with you. So, all right. So Tammy's voted out after Zoe. Then Rob's voted out. Not a ton of stuff happens in these 2 episodes because, like, the writing's on the wall. Like, we know what's going on. We talked about the reward of Malia and Pascal. Oh, I guess we didn't say, but yeah, Pascal and Malia get that. Pascal gets the one reward, and then he's like, Jeff's like, hey, you can bring someone with you. And immediately, no, he like stands up, like, he's like, no. And
that was the first time that happened. But then it becomes pretty commonplace that whenever you win a big reward, almost all the time you get to pick someone. Or no, did we had some of that in season 3? Didn't we?
Yeah, we had a good amount of that.
Win award.
Yeah, because like
that wasn't new.
But Lex took Tom once. Ethan took Lex once.
Yeah.
We even had it in like season 2. I think there's even one like that happened in season 1. So they kind of had that where it's like, hey, bring someone with you, for those rewards. But
I've seen in survivors in some contestants on podcasts saying what they want is to be brought on the reward, because if you get brought, you don't have any of the stigma of like, who did you choose, because you didn't have a choice.
Yeah,
and you get to just go enjoy it.
What I kind of found dumb about the cruise reward is they got to the cruise, they get checked into a room on there, has 2 beds, has a shower. They, both Nalia and Pascal take showers separately. And then they have a nice dinner together. And then they get brought back that night. It's like, why? I get that you need to give them a room so that they could shower. But, like, you're going to taunt them with soft beds right there and be like, nope, you got to go back tonight. Like, I know they can't give you so much. They can't give you a whole freaking vacation and a good night's sleep and all. That's just way too much of a reward. But I was like, come on, man. You're taunting them.
I think in future seasons they do get overnight rewards like that.
And they have before. Like, even when Rob and Kathy come together for the merge, like, they say, hey, send one person. That wasn't even a reward challenge. They just, one person went as the representative, and then Jeff's like, by the way, here's some free food. Also, you're going to get some soft bedding tonight. Like, that's awesome. Why couldn't they have done that for them?
Yeah.
All right. Again, I don't think I have too much. I can't remember if episode 11, I didn't write it. With the episode Rob was oh no, that episode 11, the reward challenge was the friends from home. And so I did find this funny, like, so the challenge was like one of those, you step on a board and every space you step, you gets turned over and you can't cross over a turned over spot. And the last person with space available is the winner. And Vesepia's husband had so much space available, but there's one random spot that when you turn it over, it was, you get to pick someone to get to leave that is voted out. So Vesepia's husband would have won, but then Sean's good friend gets that spot, and he's like, I don't know these people. Who am I going to pick? So he just like closes his eyes, takes off his hat, he just throws it in the air, and it hits Vesepia's husband. It's like the guy who was going to win. And Sean was mad the reward challenge before that because he's like, it's Vesepia's birthday. Pascal, why didn't you take Vesepia on the cruise? She could have used a good birthday present. She was having a hard time that day.
Yeah.
And then his friend was the one who got Vesepia's husband out. I find that a little funny.
Yeah, and they weren't allowed to like talk with their partners. They couldn't say, because I'm sure Sean he'd be like, okay, who do you not like in this group?
Actually, because they said you could do like nonverbal communication. Sean's friend looked over at Sean, and you see a camera. Sean just kind of puts his hands up, like, "Hey, man, don't look at me. I don't want the politics of this choice," which I 100% get. And if he could have snuck to be like point at, like, I don't know, he didn't like Rob probably. If he could like somehow snuck a pointing at Rob, then maybe he would have done it. But I think everyone would have seen if he. So he's like, let me just make the big gesture. It's out of my hands. I'm not going to be the bad guy here.
Yeah,
which is fair.
And I mean, we'll get to probably the most infamous loved ones visit in season 7 in a couple seasons.
Oh, Johnny Fairplay.
Yep.
I just knew. All right. So then the final, so after Rob's voted out, we have the final 5, episode 12 and episode 13, because episode 13 is the big final 4, and then 3, and then down to 2. Episode 12 has the last reward challenge, which is it's become the tradition at this point now. They give a car away as the last reward challenge.
So, a car. We'll get to that later.
So Sean gets to win this. For some reason, I have this memory in my head, and this is probably from All Stars. And so, but I had this memory in my head of Jeff announcing the car, and then is like Kathy just like something snapped in her brain, like, I have to win. And she like blows through all the challenges. Cause like they also did it for this one where it's like, hey, here's a little bit of every single reward challenge we've done up to this point, and you have to do all of these in order to win. And I just had that memory. And I think it probably is All Stars. I'm probably ruining it where she wins that card, but I just had that core memory.
I'm fairly certain that Kathy does not win the car in All Stars.
I don't remember what it was then. I just remember her being like, a car, and like blows through everything.
Huh.
Maybe it's the Mandela effect. I don't know.
Maybe.
All right. So whether I'm wrong or right or whatever.
And then at this point in the vote is a clear Kathy's in the middle between Nalia and Pascal and Sean and V, and that's when Sean and Vecepia become like, that's when it comes out like, no, we're not an alliance. We just like have been, I mean, they are, but they aren't. Like, it was just that it was never stated.
Yeah.
And whereas Pascal and Nalia like verbally agreed early on, we're not going to vote for each other.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, no matter how you call it, Kathy's in the middle. You know, those two groups of two are going to vote together.
And I get a side of it from what Sean and V are saying, because Sean's like, don't just say because we're the 2 black people here that we have to be an alliance. That's completely fair, 100%. But the way you've been acting, like, let's be honest, you guys are an alliance. And I realize that they had that chip on their shoulder because people were just going to assume that about them. But then they gravitated to that anyway. And it's like, if they didn't feel that they had to be a certain way and they have to act, I think they would have been able to say, yeah, we are an alliance. We're going to vote together. Cause they had common goals. It worked. It made sense strategically for them. And the way that they voted, it tended to be together too. Even though like Vecepia early on actually did vote for Boston Rob, Vecepia voted after the merge. She was a part of that group of like, I'm just going to, I don't like the drama of Rob. I'm going to vote for him. And then she immediately after that, like, I was dumb.
Vecepia was always kind of like doing her own game and being survivalist and trying to get herself further. We see that a little bit later on when they get to the preparing for the questions challenge. We'll get to that in a little bit. I got to say, like, I was surprised that Kathy voted for Sean here. And so to me, that this is when Sean gets voted out and he doesn't get into the final 4.
Yeah. I think whichever way Kathy voted, that she would have to do pretty much what she did anyway, like ally with the other person in that group of 2. So if she voted Pascal, or no, Nalia was up. If she voted for Nalia, then she would have had to ally with Pascal. But in doing that, if she would have made it to the final 2 then with Pascal, I think Pascal wins. I think Pascal was more liked and more respected than
I think so too.
Anyone else. I think if she would have voted, I don't remember who had immunity at this point, but I think if she would have somehow ended up in a final 2, Kathy's best shot was to end up in a final 2 with either Sean or Nalia. I don't know if she would have beaten Vecepia. I don't know if she would have beaten Pascal. But I think she probably would have beaten Vecepia. But I really feel confident she would have won over Nalia and over Sean because there was such bitterness from the alliance. But the bitterness was never focused on Kathy. It was focused on Nalia and Pascal mainly, and a bit on Sean. And I guess some on Vecepia. But it just felt like no one blamed Kathy for it. She was the 5th part, and she just happened to be there, and they're like, Kathy's fine. I feel like it's all the other 4 that got the blame.
Kathy was in a weird spot where she was not really part of any alliance because after the switch, they came back. Like John's 4-person alliance kind of took in Pascal and Nalia as like auxiliary members, but there was really no world where Kathy went back with them, even though she was on that original tribe with them. And it was clear that she was voting with Sean and V out of necessity. So it's like she was really the floater. And that also means that she never had the hate for betraying an alliance because she never was in an alliance to begin with. Yeah. And that's what I think that Kathy probably may have won against any of the other 4 people there if she made it to the end.
Yeah. Actually, I realize now in thinking about this that Vesepia, the bad will that Vesepia got, she didn't get it for when they voted for the 4. She got it because the only alliance that we saw Kathy make was at the end when it was the 4 people. And this is the other. So Sean gets voted, and now we're down to final 4. And this is the one of 2 moments that I had remembered from this season. I have remembered the peeing on the hand, and I remember this tribal council. So it was Kathy's like, I'm going to ally myself with Vesepia. And because once again, Jeff brings up, hey, you can give that up. She's like, no one has talked to me. And Vesepia is like, hey, Kathy, if you vote with me and we vote for Nalia, then I will not vote for you. And I will take you to the final 2 if you take me to the final 2. And I'm like, that probably sounds really good for Kathy's. Like, she's got immunity, so she's not getting voted out no matter what. And Nalia has votes against her. I don't know if she knew the tiebreaker going into it, but it's like, she has votes against her. And then when she find out the tiebreaker is everyone picks a rock except for Kathy, Kathy's like, I'm still in it. I'm not going to go anywhere. Worst case scenario, Vesepia's voted out and it's me against Pascal and Nalia, and I just have to hold on to whatever it is for the final 3. And so she's actually in a really good position to say, yes, Vesepia, I'll do that. And so then when it is that final 3 challenge and Kathy falls off first, because it's one of those hold on to the idol and as long as you can. Kathy falls off first. Vesepia does initiate the alliance where it's not breaking her alliance technically with Kathy because she never cast the vote, but she says, if I let go, Nalia, will you take me to the final 2? And Nalia's like, yes. And to me, that's as much of breaking the alliance as actually casting the vote for her, but I can see the loophole in her head, and that's where she got the bad blood, I think, with a couple members of the jury.
Yeah. And after she still ended up. I mean, spoiler alert. You should know if you're listening to this that she won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that rock tiebreaker, I cannot believe it. I remember sitting there like, because the votes were against Nalia and Vesepia, but Pascal has to take in this rock. So I mean, the way that they did their tiebreaker, you probably know, is that everyone who doesn't have immunity to Nekis reaches into a bag, pulls out a rock, and they're all painted. If it's a yellow one, because all of the ones except for one are painted yellow, if it's yellow, you're safe. If it's purple, you're the one voted out. And so Pascal becomes the first survivor, and I don't know if he's the only one. I can see this being a record that never gets broken. Pascal becomes the first survivor to get voted out without a single vote being cast for him.
He's not the only one. He may be the first, but he was not the last. I do know that.
Okay. But
wait 1 second. I'm doing fact checking.
Whether or not that's true, I know he for sure is the first, and that's a crazy stat. Not a single vote. I know that Tina, she wins. She never had a vote against her until the night that she won, but she won. But Pascal voted out.
So this is also something I know happens at least one other time. Not only did he not get a single vote, he had not had a vote cast against him the entire game. I have the voting history pulled up.
That's what I'm meaning. That's what I'm meaning, is that at no point in the game did he have a vote, and he gets voted out.
Season 34, that happens.
Spoiler, man!
It's a very specific scene that we'll get to that happened in that scene, in that season.
But did he have... I know who you're talking about. Did he have any votes prior?
I'm talking about a she. So no.
I thought you were talking about Jeff, when they're like, hey, you guys are going to be... Where they don't actually take an official vote, but that he's going to be...
No, I'm not talking about Jeff. I'm not sure about Jeff in that one, but no, I'm talking about... It's the same... I believe it's the same season. Yeah, it's the same season with Suri. Because what happens is everyone plays advantage...
Don't spoil it.
Okay. I mean, we've talked about it. Okay, I'll cut this part out.
Hi.
Okay.
Anyway, what was I saying? So I just remember being baffled by that moment. But what's really funny is I looked into this a little bit, and I don't remember any specific moments, but a Survivor wiki, because I was curious about this, a Survivor wiki does say that this deters like a lot of potential ties going forward, because like if that's the way that they're going to break ties, we don't want to have a tie. And so there's not a tie for like 6 seasons following this one, because like if that's a tiebreaker, that's a stupid tiebreaker. We don't want that. We don't want to have a Pascal situation.
And I think that changes. I think at different times there's different things that go on with ties.
I remember once there is a build a fire
Yeah,
challenge.
that happens a couple times.
Yeah.
And then eventually that becomes just the natural. Once you get to Final Four, you build fire.
Oh, really?
It's what happens at Final Four. This is in like the late 30s. It starts where whoever wins immunity gets to choose someone else of the Final Four to be safe, and the other two people build fire, and they don't even. That's where it is instead of a vote. So like
that's a little
yeah. So basically, Kathy could have picked V to be safe, and then made Pascal and Aaliyah made fire. But that's like that. I think it might still be today. That for multiple seasons was just that's how Final Four is now.
That's like the situation you just described. Hey, Pascal and Aaliyah, you guys have to fight. That's so mean. That feels like really evil to do. Fight for my amusement, peasants. And then they're just back there munching on a turkey leg and just slobbering all over their chest.
Something like that.
How many times this game did Pascal end up surrounded by ladies? Like Sean gets voted off, it's Pascal and these three. The tribe swap, it's Pascal and all the ladies. Like how much did that happen? Pascal's such a ladies' man this season.
Yeah. Okay. Also reminded me, I don't know why that made me think of it, but you were talking about how this season is keeps repeating. Another thing is like they did just last season. They did, hey, make yourself known for a rescue, and in this one, hey, make yourself known for a rescue boat. Same. Like,
yeah,
I feel like season 3 and 4 were planned together. They're like, here's the big points we're going to hit at each season. We're going to do a tribe swap. We're going to do this kind of challenge. We're going to do this. We're going to have them both in desert areas, but then that changed because of 9/11 for this one. Like, there's a lot of DNA for 3 and 4 combined.
Yeah. I agree. I will say, though, I like Roger and Elizabeth more than Aaliyah and Pascal.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Season 2, like, okay, we'll get to never mind. This is something I need to make sure we come back to when we're talking about the reunion, because I want to talk about Survivor impact as at season 4. All right, so final thing, we have a 4-3 vote. Vecepia wins. She beats Nalia. What do you want to share about this?
Mainly just we've already talked about how it was a bitter jury, and the Johns alliance, specifically Tammy, was just ripping them a new one and talking about how they all just seemed entitled. They all seemed like, well, our 4-person alliance, we played the game best and we should win. But as I said earlier, you didn't. So it's just that's really all I had to say about that.
Zoe was the one who seemed a bit more human. She was a bit more like, hey, girl power, awesome. You guys did it. Yeah. Good job. I don't think she asked a question. I think she just made a statement. Rob's was like, what do you regret? I don't want any explanation. Tell me what you regret. And then they like start answering. He's like, no, don't explain it. Don't explain it. I'm like, Rob, just let him say it. Come on, man. And then John's like, apologize to me. I want an apology. My mom said you can apologize. And if you apologize, then we're going to be okay. But like, I really find that funny. I wonder if Nalia would have said, John, I'm sorry that we flipped and voted you out. Because he's like, I just wanted her to say that. And I would have voted for her. If she would have said, I'm sorry, does that mean Nalia's a millionaire? I don't know. I like to play these alternate reality games, but I mean, truth is, if she says that, then some other cast member is just like, oh, why is she so weak? Don't apologize for winning. You don't need to apologize for that. I'm voting Vecepia because she's weak. Or whatever.
Well, there are some seasons in the reunion show where Jeff will be like, hey, XYZ didn't happen. Let's say you're on the jury, you're not. Raise your hands. Who votes for this person? And they're all like, this and like, hey, and then just like, ha, one mistake you could have won. Like they've done that at reunion shows. Like,
Yeah.
propose if this happened instead of this happened.
Yeah.
But this one is kind of anticlimactic, like you said. I think Giuseppe played a game. I don't think she was taken to the end. But there's a reason that she never came back, and but because she's really in the grand scheme of things, not one of the most dynamically memorable winners.
Yeah. If you kind of look at, so we had Richard, and he was a dynamic winner, and he was a bit of a villain too. And then you have Tina, Ethan, and Giuseppe, and all of them seem really kind, seem like, they played a good game, but at the same time, they weren't like jump out ahead of things. It's not that they were stupid or that they rode on coattails, but they also had a little bit of luck that got them to where they need to be, and they did well to not ruffle feathers and got the jury votes because of that. So like, I don't remember who wins next season. Actually, I think I do remember who wins next season.
I remember.
But like, I'm interested to see when that changes, because like now we have 3 winners in a row that is pretty much, you get a little lucky. I think all 3 of them needed a little bit of luck. They needed the right person to take the heat, but then to also play it smart. And they both kind of did. They had both of those things. So I'm interested to see when it comes into like hey, I actually dominated and I kicked butt, and I'm not going to apologize for it. I know I outwitted some of you guys and I did the wrong thing, but I did it.
And there are a lot of different winners with a lot of different strategies. And it's interesting when you get all the way to season 40, it's Winners at War, where it's all previous winners. Mm-hmm. And the farthest back they go, Ethan was brought back from last season, but he's but he's one of 2 single-digit season winners they brought back.
Gotcha. Well, do you want to talk about the fever dream that is the reunion?
Yeah, or no. I mean, there's not a whole lot to say. I don't have as much notes about that as I did with the last seasons. First of all, Rosie O'Donnell is an interesting choice.
She absolutely is. Go ahead.
And she definitely has the energy, whereas Brian Gumbel was trying to be like, I am a reporter, and I'm going to talk about, and she kind of has the energy of a crazy fan. Hey, remember when you peed on the guy? That was really cool. Remember this? And she's all energetic, and this is cool. And hey, look, it's Colby. And it's just like, okay, calm down a little bit.
A little bit of the, like, Chris Farley from Saturday Night Live. Hey, remember when you got on the horse, Sean, and then you squashed your nuts, and you're like, oh, my balls. Remember that? That was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that, but with the manic energy. And of course, like, she rides in on the motorcycle with Colby, and she's always making these jokes about, like, ooh, Colby's so hot. And I'm thinking, was she not out?
No, she was. We all know she's a lesbian. We all knew that.
But, okay, I know that now, but I'm trying to remember, did we know that 20 years ago?
We did. We knew that in the 90s. It was a little bit more of, like, not everyone was Ellen. So there was a little bit more of, play along with it. But still, it's like early 2000s. She was out. Everyone knew she was out. It wasn't a surprise. I think she was just kind of like playing into, like, this is what people would want a host that's weird to say this. And this is what all these surrogate women are thinking. Ooh, Colby, your arms are around him. Ha.
Yeah. And this was obviously in the prime time of celebrity of, Survivor contestants being celebrities, because everyone cheered when Colby was revealed as the motorcycle driver.
Yeah.
But there wasn't really any strategy that was talked about. It was more like the funny moments. They talked about the peeing. They talked about, I mean, she says to Sarah, hey, I'm glad you brought your boobs with you, which is kind of that's kind of an awkward sentence.
Oh, I left mine at home. Okay.
She talks about Sean with his nuts. So yeah.
They didn't show any audition tapes, though.
No.
So
I'm wondering if they were purposely trying to make it less pervy by getting rid of Brian Gumbel and getting rid of the audition tapes.
I don't
not
that
that all of them were.
I think us looking at the way that Brian Gumbel was and like some of the questions he asked, I think we have a post Me Too glasses on where
I suppose
it's not. It's really uncomfortable, the questions he asked, but there was still like a degree of the, like, oh, boys will be boys sort of thing of like, oh, yeah. I can't believe he went there sort of comments versus like, I can't believe he went there. Like there's
Yeah.
outrage versus like, oh, he's pushing the envelope. Wow, you being a little racy. Okay, haha. Like that was more socially acceptable. And
Yeah.
I actually like someone was talking about this. I don't know if they call themselves a survivor historian, if there's such a thing. If that's your job, then get another job, man. Yeah, like come on.
Well,
But
okay, there are people. So I will say Rob Cesternino, who we'll see in 2 seasons, his whole job, like he is the king of podcasts. His full time job is podcasting. I mean, not just about Survivor, but primarily about Survivor.
yeah,
And he has an audiobook I haven't bought, but you can buy where they break down like every episode in detail, and it's like 300 hours of Survivor talk you can listen to.
he found his way to make his 15 minutes of fame last his lifetime.
Pretty much, because he even now like he has all the new survivors on. He'll have old contestants on as guests, and it's like a whole little community that he's built around that.
But a historian was talking about, because I looked it up. I'm like, I just want to see what people say about why they picked Rosie O'Donnell. And so it sounded like it was Bryant Gumbel's decision not to come back for the reunion. So
Okay.
the reason why he was for the first couple seasons is because Survivor was news and he was a reporter, and he treated the reunion like on-set interview. And so like that's why the questions he asked were the way that they were. He does his research and he has it's a lot lower energy than what Rosie O'Donnell does, because Brian Gumbel and Rosie O'Donnell, very different people.
Very different.
But he does ask, like you were talking about, instead of like we're just going to hang around out and have fun energy that Rosie brought, his was a lot more like, I want to hear some more behind the scenes. I want to ask you these questions. I want to probe to get to some responses. And so like that's where he was brought in. I can't remember what was said about why he didn't come back, that there was something that like I think that he felt like because Survivor was losing momentum, I think this is what I was reading, that after season two, it definitely peaked. Season 3 wasn't bad, but it didn't have the cast of season 2. And now season 2 and 3 were in the same year. Season 1 was in its own year. Season 2 and 3 were in the same year. And then season 4 and 5 were at the start of the fall, because they would do it where one season in the fall, one season in the spring. So season 4 was in the fall of that year. And I think the ratings for Africa were slower than they were for Australia. And I think it sounded like he saw a little bit of the writing on the wall and was like, I think it's past its cultural moment. And so it still was a big deal, but I think he was saying this isn't newsworthy at this point in my career, and I'm not going to become that guy. So I think he was like, I'm going to step away and I'm going to say no. And that's where CBS turned to Rosie, who had a talk show at the time, not The View, but she had a big, and that was bringing in ratings. And so they're like, okay, here's Rosie. People like her. Let's make this more entertaining. Let's have this high energy. And so like they brought Rosie O'Donnell on, and Rosie O'Donnell is just, she is pretty much a white lesbian wannabe Oprah, because she gave away a car to everyone in this finale here. And so like she wanted to kind of have that feel. And I understand that side of it. Like this is still, Survivor is an entertainment show, so I understand, let's entertain the audience. I don't remember why she didn't come back for the second one or for any more after this, because again, it doesn't sound like it was a CBS decision. It sounded like it was Brian Gumbel decided not to, and then Rosie did one and decided not to, and then they're like, okay, we need someone, so we put in Jeff Probst, because the audience response at the time was like Jeff Probst coming back to host it was like a downgrade. That's like, we just watched it. He's just this reality TV show host. He's not some big name. Why can't they get some big name for this? But he still does a good job, and I think he should have been doing it all along anyway.
I think so too. And it's funny, like you talk about how it seemed like it was declining. It may have been declining, because looking back, 4 and 5, maybe even 6 are like kind of like they're not super rewatched seasons, I think.
Yeah.
But like then you get Pearl Islands and All Stars, which is another big jump, and there are a lot of super classic Survivor seasons and Survivor players who are into the teens, and like Then they do, fans versus favorites, and eventually, I know one of the biggest seasons is, season 20 is heroes versus villains, where they bring back all, like, every time they do a returning player season, it's like, oh my gosh, it's all my favorite players.
Yep.
I mean, it's still on today, so I mean, clearly they didn't, falter too much in the early 2000s.
Agreed. And I'm not like gonna just be like, oh, that they sucked then or whatever. And like whether it was good TV or not good TV, it still was popular enough to get, like you said, all these seasons. But it was like the equivalent of like the Beatles Ed Sullivan Show craze with season 1 and 2. Like, these people were celebrities. Like I said when we talked about season 2, Mitchell, who was voted out like 3rd of Survivor Australia, had more space on the cover of like Entertainment Weekly than Julia Roberts did. His picture was bigger. And so like these guys, these random people had this celebrity status that you didn't see replicated, and people started getting tired. You can't maintain that pace. There were still the fans, and we still had plenty of people watching it, but I just even remember some anecdotal stuff of some people being like, after, I don't remember what season this was, they said it was like, I don't know if I want to keep watching Survivor. You can only watch people come up with fire so many times. I'm like, I know that that's only the first episode. There's a lot of stuff that happens in the season, but the sentiment is you're watching a lot of the same, but with new people. And if you don't dig that cast, especially even right off the get-go, you might be like, I don't know if this season's for me.
Exactly, and that's why some of these seasons are kind of more low energy, because the best seasons have at least one, if not more, like really dynamic. Oh man, I love that character. It's got a Rupert, it's got a Colby, it's got a Johnny Fairplay, it's got one of those guys on there.
Yeah, and you absolutely need that. And that's why I just find Survivor Australia to be so fantastic, because it had so many of that type of player.
I remember season 2 of that Australia. We had a magazine where had the question mark for like the progression of the people getting voted out, and you could like cut out, and it had all the players' squares below, and like every week you would old school cut it out and glue it to the right spot as you go there.
It's nuts. They had a Survivor video game that came out after season 2, and you could play as any Survivor from season 1 or season 2 trying to. And I actually think it came out after season 3, because I think you could do some from season 3 too. And so you can play as any of these. Yep, that's the one. Does that have 1, 2, and 3?
I think it only has. I haven't played this in years, and I honestly don't know if my computer is too new to play it.
The AI of it is terrible. It's like, how are you
awful.
supposed to come up with alliances on 90s AI? I mean, it's not 90s, early 2000s.
I don't know why I remember this, but the last time I have the computer game, I just showed it to Matt. The last time I played it was the day I got my driver's license 20 years ago. I remember that. Why do I remember that? And why have I kept it for 20 years without playing it?
I don't know.
I have moved several times and moved that with me. I didn't even own this desk when that happened.
This desk is not mine. I don't know who I am anymore. All right. Well, the last thing I want to say, okay, I'm going to pivot it, because Brian and I are Christian, and this season had more prayer in it than any other season that I remember seeing in Survivor. Like, there are so many times, because we had Vesepia, and we had Sean, and we had Nalia, and I think early on, I think Peter was too, because I think Peter prayed with Sean. So we had a couple different guys that were very big on their faith and were very clear about giving God credit. And I thought that was really impressive, and actually just something to walk away with, because this is something that actually changed something within me. Like like I had depression, and I had issues that were like set from like as a kid. And what I started doing is something that Vesepia said she did in the finale, or in the reunion. She said to Rosie, she's like, I knew I was going to be Survivor. I sent in my audition tape, and then what I did was I found this verse from Habakkuk, and I put it on my computer. And she's like, every day I said that verse. I can't remember what it was. I wish I remembered that now. But she's like, I said that verse every day, and I said it out loud. And then I found out that I made the Survivor cast. And so then I printed off this other verse, and something about like victory in Christ or whatever. She's like, then I said that verse every single day, and I just kept repeating it. And I'm like, that's what I did. Like, to unseat these issues that I had when I was a kid, I was like, I looked like Charlie Day from It's Always Sunny, where it's like that meme where he's pointing to like the conspiracy theory. I had a wall of like prophetic words and promises and Bible verses and things that I knew to be true, what God said over me. And I would say those every single day, all the time. And like what that did for me, speaking it out loud, completely changed the framework of my life. So I loved that Vesepia gave that credit. It was like, I really do believe she attributes her victory to just positively speaking it into existence through scripture. Yeah. And I'm like, that's awesome. Good for you, V.
That is cool. And I do like when Christianity can get its, not moment, but like it's credit in mainstream, because especially it's rare, especially now.
Yeah. And John, I know specifically in this season was like, real, like he was the one who had the harshest things to say about like Nalia and Vesepia being the final two, and it's like, well, I have to choose between these Bible thumpers, which one to give. Like, all right,
with that, when he was saying that, I'm like, I don't remember ever seeing either of them be like, you guys have to be Christian. Like, it was them sharing, this is for me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what his thing was, because unless it was behind the scenes, I don't think either of them were trying to make him become a Christian.
Yeah. I think they were just annoyed by the constant perjury. Like, I think that they attributed hypocrisy to like Christians have to act a certain way. And so they can't lie and they can't betray and they have to be okay with taking a back seat so that I can get what I want. And like, not everyone thinks that way, of course, but I think that's how they reasoned it away in this game. Like a game about lying, and a Christian came in and actually lied. What would Jesus think? I'm like, you guys kind of all agreed to the rules of this game. I think everyone knew lying's on the table.
And I will say the most competitive person I know is a pastor.
Yeah. Even if you don't play for money, if you play poker with a Christian, they're not going to be like, by the way, I have 2 aces and a king. I just want you to know what's in my hand.
So, yeah, exactly.
Like, it's a game. When you play a game, I don't think God's like, how dare you bear false testimony in what you're doing? Like, no, that's part of what you're doing. You're not lying with an intent to hurt. You're lying as a part of the framework of this game. That's just what it is.
Exactly.
So, all right. Well, that's my moment about that over. Thanks for bearing with us if you didn't like that. And if you did like it, great. Then we like you too. All right.
So I had an idea. I talked to Matt beforehand that we, in a few episodes or at some point down the line, we're going to do season 5. So not having to watch it. So season 5 is not an episode I have rewatched since it aired. So Matt, I think I have more than you. So what do you remember about season 5 of Survivor, which is Survivor Thailand?
And if there's some things you might say that'll like spark something in me, and I might add after you. The 2 things I remember. There's a challenge where they're going from one side to another side over like this like balance beam, and once they get to a certain point on the balance beam, there's like an attack area that you can fight one of the survivors and more physical exertion. And one survivor named Clay, this is the only survivor, no, there's 2 survivors I can remember from this season. Those are the only 2. Clay comes out into the middle, and the other person he's going to square off against just grabs him by the throat and starts choking him. And Clay's eyes like are bugging out as he's getting choked. And I think even like Jeff's like, you weren't in the attack area. Like, it's because there's a specifically designated attack area. And if you violate it, you have to put whatever you were trying to bring across back. And the one tribe just was decimating this other tribe, but they kept doing it outside the attack area. They didn't care. They just like, we're going to injure him. We're going to play dirty. But the choke on Clay stuck with me.
Yep, that was one of mine too. Clay is one of those guys who he's going to rub some people the wrong way.
Yeah.
As is the winner. Because it's me, I remember who wins every season. So I'm not going to say, hey, this person wins, because that's a little less fun for you who might be watching it for the first time. I also remember there's a vote where somebody puts a nickname for when they're voting,
And it
and
was
Jeff,
Clay who wrote it. I remember that now.
yeah, and Jeff's like, "Who is this? Who'd you vote for?" And he's he's like, "No more nicknames," because it wasn't like Boston Rob or something. It was a nickname that they had talked about at camp, and Jeff didn't know who the vote was for.
And it was like a long nickname too, like the old Mama C or something like that. I'm like, what is this name? And it's like, for the first time in Survivor history, I don't know who this vote is for. And Clay had to be like, oh,
Yeah.
that's for them.
Yeah, yeah. I remember there was something about there's a guy and a girl who it wasn't a scandal, but they were sleeping close to each other, and someone thought something might have been happening.
That's this
I don't
season?
remember. I believe it's this next season.
What was
I don't
it?
remember what.
Was it a black couple?
Well, yeah. I mean, they weren't a couple, but yeah, they're both black.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then he was like, I have a wife at home. I'm not going to be doing that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Remember,
There's that, and then
I also remember a throwaway line from all of mine are like Clay moments, I guess. But I remember a throwaway line from Clay because it was the first time I realized that more than just first and second place got paid. And Clay at one point says in Tribal Council, says, "We're not just playing. It's not like we're playing for $20. This is $1 million. Like that. It's a difference between them. I'm like, oh, so like the last place person gets like what, $20 or something like that."
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but there is like a pay scale. Like the farther you get, the more money you get.
Which makes sense. I get it.
Yeah. And the last thing I don't remember her from this season at all. I don't remember what she did, but there's a contestant named Sheann. And I remember because she is the only contestant from season 5 who goes on to play again. She comes back for All Stars because All Stars is season 8, and they bring back at least one person from every season. And season 5, it felt like, all right, we got to put one. And they bring back Sheann, but I don't remember anything she did in season 5 at all.
Yeah, I looked up a picture of her, and I do not recognize her.
Nope.
But
she's the only return contestant from season 5.
There you go. I remember, I can't remember what his name is. I think it's Brian, who's got like hair that's like parted in the middle. He played a guitar or something, right?
I don't know if he played a guitar, but he's got your typical like 90s, early 2000s surfer vibe.
Okay, yeah. I'm fairly certain that I remember his audition video where he grabs raw meat and he just starts eating raw meat on camera.
Huh.
I believe that is so. I think that's what I remember from that. That's my last little moment.
Huh.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
The weird stuff that sticks in your mind.
Yeah, and that is like 20-year throwback because I've not rewatched. There's a lot of seasons that I love Survivor, and so a lot of seasons I've seen multiple times. A lot of seasons are very fresh in my mind. Survivor Thailand is not one of them, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Like I said, I remember who wins, and I remember like who the final maybe 3 or 4 are, but there's a whole chunk in the middle where I'm like, I don't know who's going to get voted out. I mean, unless it's the winner or something. Like if it's between, John and Ron, I don't know who's going to get voted out.
I'm just making up names. 16. I've got a 4x4 grid square where I'm looking at the pictures of all of those survivors. And I recognize Brian and Clay, and I have no idea who any of those other people are. That person looks like a Larry. No, not really.
You must be looking at Survivor Wiki, where I'm just looking at regular Wikipedia.
I'm not even, because I don't want it to reveal anything extra, so I just looked up Survivor cast and jumped to images. All right, well, hey, let's just jump into trivia. Let's get out of here. So last week we talked about Daily Show, and we ended it in a fun way. We did the 5 questions that the Daily Show with Craig Kilborn did, and so we didn't actually have trivia from last week. Oh no, so sad. But we do have trivia this week, and Brian, he's all over this. He's the Survivor trivia guru. So go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. You might not have guessed, but one of the 16 contestants of Survivor Marquesas has won 12 Emmy Awards for something. So, who won 12 Emmy Awards out of Survivor Marquesas? Not for Survivor Marquesas, by the way.
Fun fact, that person has 8 more Emmys than Jeff Probst.
Jeff's won 4.
He's only won 4. I mean, that's 4 more than what I've got, but I also have never been on a TV show, so of course I'm not going to have any.
One time in high school, the local news played footage of my marching band, and I think you could see me for a second. So
did you win an Emmy for that performance?
Yes, I did.
Bull crap, you did. All right. Well, hey guys, next week we're going to jump forward about 1.5 years in TV time, because we're talking about this. Survivor Marquesas came out in 2002. On September 22nd, 2004, Flight 815 crashed into on an island in the South Pacific. Similar to an island like Marquesas. We're staying in the same general region, but we're going to talk next week about Lost. And it was just its 20th anniversary about 2 months back. And so we're going to bring on a special guest of ours. He's never been on the program before. His name's Tanner. He's a fun guy. He's got his own podcast that's just crazy, man. He looks into conspiracy theories in the Bible. So we'll let you have some more information about him when he's on next week or next time. But we're going to rank 45 Lost characters, 45 characters that were on the show Lost. They aren't Lost characters.
And we had to whittle the list down to 45.
Yeah. You're like, 45, that's a ton. It's like, I said 50. And even then I'm like, that doesn't cover nearly as many as I thought it did. But
we're bleeding in the next time episodes.
We are. Until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And we're reminding you to stay tuned and keep watching.